So one question we get all the time is about podcasting, and is about how The Worthy Podcast started. So on today's episode, on today's Vlogmas episode, day 8, we are going to talk about podcasting. Talk a little bit about the 4 things that I truly love about podcasting. But before that, we'll talk a little bit about why we started doing podcasting to help us with our business. So let's go. So in another vlog, I'll talk a little bit about Worthy Leadership Group, right? And why we started that business and that executive coaching firm, because I think it bears its own probably 3 maybe days of us talking about it. But the podcast is an outcropping of Worthy Leadership Group. We started thinking about marketing tactics. We started thinking about things that we really wanted to do, something that was kind of a natural aspect of who we are. And for me, I did radio, a while ago, and a good buddy of mine, when we lived in Atlanta, we actually had what we called a blog talk radio show. It was called For Husbands by Husbands, and it had its own measure of success. And so at that point in time, I truly loved the medium of radio. I loved the medium of podcasting, but I hadn't done it since probably 2008. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and things along that line, but never really went back into the medium like full force. And then when I started Worthy Leadership Group, I started thinking of a way to really talk about us, talk about what we can offer, in a way that's different than just kind of the blanket marketing and social media aspects. And so we started looking at podcasting, and I have to be very honest with you. It took a lot for me to actually get to this point, to actually launch the podcast and actually go through it, because I dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome, and we'll talk about that one here shortly. But podcasting for us has been outstanding. It has been an amazing medium. It has been something that we have felt that has been really natural for us to do, natural for us to partake in. We feel that the content that we create has been awesome. We feel that the level of our community of listeners, it has been outstanding. The feedback that we receive has been great. But I want to talk about 4 things that I've learned thus far about podcasting. Number 1 is that, whenever you get into podcasting, the first thing that you struggle with and to think about is like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough content. I don't have enough life experiences or different things like that. And I have to say, for me, I have over 25 years of business leadership experience. And so for me, content wasn't an issue. Initially I felt that it was, but then I started thinking, I looked at all my journals. I know Diana talks a lot about journaling. I looked at all my journals from over years and years and years, and I realized that I have enough content to talk about. I have enough content that is going to be relevant to our community of listeners. Also, I have a good bandwidth of people that I can rely on for content. But the other side of it is that I've been able to create strategies around researching and curating our content that is actually very, it's heavily research based, but more importantly, it's relevant to our community at large. So number 1 for me was that I love to create the content for our podcast, and I love to actually disseminate that to our audience, because I know it's going to be relevant. I know it's going to hit home on something that they're dealing with, or that they will deal with within their leadership journey. Number 2 is that I get excited every single time I'm about to record a podcast. I don't know if you have something that within your work, within your life, probably other than your family, right? You get excited to see your family and things like that. But I get super excited every time I've gone through my workflow and been able to create, I feel, what's going to be a really solid piece of content from a podcast standpoint, or have a guest on that's going to be outstanding that people are going to get a lot of value from, I get super excited. I am like a kid in a candy store. I am a kid on Christmas Day opening up a gift that I feel like God has given me, that I'm able to share something that I love, something that I'm really passionate about with other people. And then also when we have a guest on, having them tell their story, we'll talk about that here in a second, but having them tell their story is something that for me is so cool, something that I can't get enough of. And so for me, number 2 is that I just get super excited about every single episode that we record. Number 3 is, I'll start number 3 by telling a story real quick. And it was a story I heard that it was a while ago. Trevor Noah, South African comedian. Hopefully you guys know him. He has his own talk show, pretty popular guy, really smart guy. And he told a story a while ago, and this is something that has resonated with me, where he was going on tour with Dave Chappelle, and he asked Dave Chappelle, he said, Dave Chappelle, like, why do you want me on your tour? Like, you know so many more funny people, people and guys and gals that are funnier than me. So, and Dave Chappelle said something to him that I thought was really interesting. He said, yeah, I know a lot of other people who are really super funny. He said, but the thing about it is that you're interesting. You're interesting and you're funny. And that stuck with me, because whenever I think about number 3 for us, is that I love to hear the stories of our guests. But more importantly for me, I take pride in the fact that people that we bring on are interesting. Within the world of leadership and executive coaching, there are so many people that have asked to be on the show that I can look at and say, oh man, I would love to have them on the show, But then I always run it through the filter of, are they interesting? Will our community of listeners find their story compelling? Or will it just be something that people have heard all the time? And so we're really selective about who we bring on our show. We are, dare I say, just very selective about who we bring on our show. I'll just clean it up and put it that way. And so that is the other part, number 3, that I really enjoy, is listening and hearing the stories of all of our guests and how they impact my life personally, but more importantly, how they impact the lives of our listeners. And number 4 should have probably been number 1. And this is, maybe you will probably, when I say this one, you're probably like, well, this is something that you really like about podcasting. When I started the idea about becoming a podcaster and using it to promote our business and to kind of create social proof and also build brand awareness, equity, all of those different things, right? I dealt a lot with imposter syndrome. I did a complete 2-part episode on that. If you want to check that out, there's a link down below. It's one of our most popular. It's probably out of our 18 episodes thus far, it's our top 3 podcast episode. And I dealt with a lot of it, and I dealt with it in the context of like, who's going to want to listen to my message? Who cares about what I have to say? And I go back to a story when I lived in Atlanta and we were starting that Blog Talk radio show that I talked to you about earlier. And we struggled initially with the same thing. And I had the distinct pleasure of meeting Herman Cain, who just recently passed away, at a leadership conference in Atlanta. He had his own radio show in Atlanta as well. And I had the great opportunity to speak to him about being on the radio. And he said something to me that just resonated with me as well. He said, Steve, you got to think about that your message, even if it's only one person that's listening, you got to present it in a context that one person is going to get something out of it. And when I thought back about that and when he said that, it just lit a fire underneath me. And so even though I've dealt with and still deal with the imposter syndrome sometimes, and thinking, am I good enough or not? Or do I deserve all the people that have been listening to our show, which has been so humbling and so cool? I go back to the idea that, man, there's just that one person that's out there actually that wants to listen to what we have to say, and hopefully that'll impact their life. So I hope you got something out of this. This is a pretty quick one. Well, not really quick. It's probably going to be a little bit over 10 minutes. Probably one of my longer ones. So, we talked a little bit about the 4 things of why we like podcasting. And up next, in our next vlog, is that I'm going to talk a little bit about probably the 4 things that I probably don't like about podcasting, and, how that can impact if you're thinking about becoming a podcaster, or maybe how we can help you kind of talk through a little bit things of if you're thinking about podcasting or something along those lines as well. So thank you for listening to Vlogmas Day 8 for Worthy Leadership Group and The Worthy Podcast. Please have a great day, and God bless.